the biggest thing I want people to remember is if you think it is a second job, you're doing it wrong. Okay. Real estate's supposed to be a passive investment. And this is what I tell doctors. Okay. You've got a doctor's office, right? Right. Yeah. So when somebody comes walking in the door, do you open the door for them? No. Do you have them fill out the forms? No. Do you put them in a room? No. Do you take their blood pressure? No. Well, when you book them for surgery, do you make the phone calls? No. And then I kind of say, well, why are you there? You don't do nothing. Well, the thing is, there is only certain parts of your job as a physician that you need to do. The rest of it can be done by somebody else. And if you ran your doctor's office saying, I have to do everything, you could not make it work.
Welcome to the Real Estate Mogul MD podcast. Thanks for tuning in and taking control of your financial future. This is a show where we not only motivate and inspire, we give you actionable real-world experience to help you live life by design. You'll hear journeys and stories from other physicians, investors, coaches, consultants, and entrepreneurs. And now, here's your host, Brett Riggins. Today, I am thrilled to welcome Dr. Cory Fawcett, a former surgeon turned veteran real estate investor and financial coach. Now, he's going to talk about what he has done, not what he's going to do. He's managed 64 rentals while working full-time as a surgeon, all in under 15 hours a month. Dr. Fawcett is here to share how healthcare professionals can live debt-free, invest in real estate, and build a life of financial freedom. Let's go. Dr. Fawcett, welcome to the show. Am I saying that correctly? Fawcett.
Yes, like water faucet. You got it. Thanks, Brett.
So we're about to turn it on. Welcome to the show. Hey, before we get started, how does it feel to be Cory today?
Today's a pretty cool day. I was sick a few days ago, and we were actually on vacation and got sick. It's like, ruined half of the vacation because you just spent the whole time in bed. But now I'm recovered and raring and ready to go. And I'm happy to start the new year. I have a new goal. I'm going to walk/run 2,025 miles during 2025.
Holy cow. So how does that break down to daily then?
You got average a little over 11,000 steps a day, every day, all year. Wow. If you're consistent. But, I started out the year sick, so I'm behind already.
Yeah.
Got some catching up to do.
Catch up here in the beginning. So also, before we started recording, for the guests who have not seen the YouTube or anything like that, I've got a guitar that hangs behind me in my studio here. And you noticed it, and it was very interesting. You used to play music. You currently play music. So that's something that's a little different than all of the guests, most of the guests that come on, that you did it professionally. And you're seeking to do it professionally again after medicine. So tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, so my journey into music started when I was in about first grade, when my dad bought my mom a piano, and it came with some free lessons, and she didn't have time to take them. So she asked me if I would take the piano lessons. And that was the first of 6 years of piano lessons. Oh, wow. And then my brother got a guitar for Christmas. And we were at the age where you better give one to the other guy too. And so they gave me a guitar, and I started learning to play guitar. And a couple of years later, I was playing guitar in a rock band. Oh, wow. I played for 5 years. I was the leader of the band and played a lead singer and a guitar player. And we ended up recording an album. But when I got to medical school, it became very clear I could either be a musician or I can be a physician. I cannot be both. They both required full-time effort. And so I decided to go with the one who eats better. I knew a lot of musicians who were better than me that they had to bum a ride to work, and I thought, I don't know of any doctors who have to bum a ride to work. So maybe I'll go with the for sure thing, and I can play music for fun. Yeah. And I've played for fun ever since.
That's very cool. And then later on now, we're talking, I was going to think like music is kind of one of those things, almost like golf. Like it could stick with you through your life, and you can, no matter where you're at in your life, you can always find the way to do it. You mentioned, you know, you had some friends that were better than you as musicians, and they were bumming a ride to work. It's very interesting. So I've got a couple of buddies that have kind of like progressed along the way, and I actually saw one New Year's Eve. I saw him on TV. I haven't seen him in a while, and I saw him on TV. He was with one of the bigger bands, and I saw him playing guitar. I'm like, see, it works for some people, right? Some people make it there, but you never know. He may still be bumming a ride. You never know.
Yeah, you only see him play. I wanted to be like a touring musician, you know, the kinds that are up for Grammy Awards and stuff like that. Yeah. And until one day, a few years into my medical practice, I hosted a band that came to town. And it was my job to pick them up, get them back to the, you know, take them around town, get them where they're supposed to be. And I realized that they really live a crappy life. Mm-hmm. They live out of the bus. They're on the road. They hardly ever see their families. They do get Christmas, a month off at Christmas. But when I looked at their life, which I had envied before, and I look at my life today, there's just no comparison. And I'm so glad I didn't try and pursue that life and end up maybe as a professional musician who was touring all over the world and never saw his family. It's not always what it seems.
Yeah, and that reminds me of a song. I think it's a Garth Brooks song, actually. Some of God's greatest gifts are unanswered prayers. You know, chasing down those things that we think are what we want or we think mean a lot to us in life. And then when we find out that's not really, that the value may not be there, that's not our path.
Yeah, and it's funny because when I looked at music, I looked at the dream. I looked at the best pieces of it and totally ignored the rest. Oh, yeah. And if you do that, you get a warped sense of what reality is. You know, people do that even, you know, if you think about real estate, in my real estate book, there's a chapter about people's perception. And when I tell people I'm a physician, I get, wow, you know, how proud your mom must be. And you get all this kind of stuff. But if I tell people I'm a landlord, oh my goodness. Oh, I would never be a landlord. I can't believe, you know, all these people tear up your, you know, if you tell them you're a doctor, man, they can only see the great things about being a doctor. And if you tell them that you're a real estate investor, they can only see toilets on Thanksgiving. And it's like we give ourselves these perceptions and they're all often one-sided, and that just doesn't tell the whole story. And if you miss part of the story, you can really go down a wrong path. Yeah.
And getting fixated on the good, but understanding that there are bad behind that. It's interesting how we build our perspective, the way that we see the world. But before we get into more, like you have so much to share when it comes to being like you say, a physician, but now you are a veteran real estate investor. You've done a lot while being a physician. So could you maybe just start by giving us a little bit about your mission to help healthcare professionals live healthy, happy, and debt-free lives, and what inspired you to take this journey? I mean, we've talked about so much already. What inspired you to take this journey?
Well, I used to. I started my life out in one path financially. Somebody gave me a book called Common Sense when I was a teenager. And it basically said, if you just follow these principles, you're going to be financially well off for the rest of your life. And so I just did. I thought everybody else did that too. And I became a new physician in town. And I'm a brand new, right out of residency physician. And we started this big project with a bunch of doctors in town. And they said, okay, you guys need to pony up. Everybody needs to pony up $5,000 so that we can get the seed money to get this underway. And I said, great. Who do I make the check out to? And there were a bunch of doctors who had been, now I've only been in practice a year. There was a bunch of doctors who were nearing retirement who were given excuses as to why they didn't have $5,000 to put in there. And that totally, I didn't realize not everybody was doing it like I was doing. And people started looking at me like, how come that guy's got $5,000 and I don't? And people started coming to me and asking questions and asking for help. And over the years, we did a lot of discussions on finance, personal finance, what to do, how to handle the debt. And over the I'm busy, got some patients belly open, and we're talking finance. Because you can do the operation, on autopilot. You do so many of them. And so when people just kept coming to me, it just seemed like, at the end of my career, maybe what I should do when I give up medicine is help the doctors with these things that seems, second nature to me, because this is the way I've always done it. But apparently not everybody did it that way. And so it opened up a place for me to just take what I had been doing in the doctor's break room, and over the patients during surgery, and turn it into a project in my retirement years. And it became my new purpose. I kind of like to say I didn't retire, I repurposed. Mm-hmm. I went from helping patients one at a time to helping physicians many at a time.
I love that repurpose thing. And for me, I don't know that I will ever retire because I don't know that I actually have a job, really. I get to do what I love. It's such a blessing in and of itself. And you mentioned this book, but I think you've written a couple books, right?
Yes. A couple means 7. My 7th book's coming out here soon. I started a series. This is the one we're talking about, The Doctor's Guide to. It's a series of books, and they all have the same front cover, but different color and different words. But they're all a doctor's guide series. And each one takes one financial aspect about being a doctor, how to handle your debt, how to buy real estate, how to retire, how to get your practice started. Each one has got its own little niche of personal finance that I wanted to pass on as somebody who's already done it. You read so many books about, or hear so many people talking about what they're going to do. All of my stuff basically shows you what I did and how I did it. I come from, since I didn't start this until I was already financially independent and retired. Now I'm kind of looking back. Well, how did I get here? And what could you do to get here as well? So I wrote, almost all of the books are basically pointed at physicians and professionals. And the reason I did that is my wife and I used to teach a class called Crown Financial Ministries. It's a 10-week Bible study on money management. And it's set for the average income person. And that covers like 80% of the country. But doctors are not average income. They have a high income. And so they have different problems, different concerns. And I knew that every time I went to talk to a doctor about the things that I was teaching in Crown, they would say stuff like, well, it's fine to talk about getting out of debt. And my nurse can get out of debt because she doesn't have as much debt as I have. And when you talk to the nurses would say, oh, well, you doctors could get out of debt because you got such a high income. And each person would look to something that was unique about them that can say, this is why I can't do it, but those other people can. And so I wanted to write this series in a way that the physicians could not say, but that doesn't pertain to me, because I pointed it right at them. It worked for me. It will work for you. You don't have any excuses now. Don't tell me it can't be done because of X. And so that the principles apply to everybody. What people didn't realize is when it comes to debt, you can only get into debt in ratio to your income. So higher income people can get higher debt, but the ratio stays the same. So it's the same difficulty for a wealthy person to get out of debt as for a average income person to get out of debt, because their income to debt ratio remains pretty constant. You can only get so far in debt until you can't make those payments anymore. And that's the end point. So my whole series is based on eliminating those excuses.
The first excuse that pops into my mind is you would be surprised on how creative that I can be and how creative I can grab additional debt, not based on my DTI, right? But hey, you talked about things that that you did, not that you're going to do. So this real estate investing for busy professionals, really focusing in on that physician, right? The doctor's guide to. You're doing this because you manage 64 rental units while working full time as a surgeon. Yeah. I believe that you spend less than 15 hours a month doing this. What advice do you have for healthcare professionals interested in real estate investing, but concerned about the time commitment?
The biggest thing I want people to remember is if you think it is a second job, you're doing it wrong. Okay. Real estate's supposed to be a passive investment. And this is what I tell doctors. Okay. You've got a doctor's office, right? Right. Yeah. So when somebody comes walking in the door, do you open the door for them? No. Do you have them fill out the forms? No. Do you put them in a room? No. Do you take their blood pressure? No. Well, when you book them for surgery, do you make the phone calls? No. And then I kind of say, well, why are you there? You don't do nothing. Well, the thing is, there is only certain parts of your job as a physician that you need to do. The rest of it can be done by somebody else. And if you ran your doctor's office saying, I have to do everything, you could not make it work. You couldn't see enough patients if you had to do all the pieces. And yet we buy a piece of real estate and suddenly we forget everything we know about running an office and we think we have to do everything. I have to answer every phone call. I have to go check everything. I have to do this. I have to do that. I got to mow the lawn. I got to rake the leaves. You don't got to do any of those things. So run your real estate ownership the same way you run your office. You have people to do that, you know, and when you do that part and you only do the piece that is required by you to do, it takes very little time to manage 64 rental units. It only took me 15 hours a week. And that was a high number because there were some things that I enjoyed doing about the real estate that I kept on my plate and I did them anyway. And if I got rid of those, I would probably be down to an hour a month or so that it takes to manage those. And later on, when I retired, a funny thing, I thought when I would retire, I would take over the management of stuff. It didn't work out that way because when I retired, I started traveling all over the world. And it's very hard to manage your property from a boat off the coast of Brazil. That doesn't work well. No one can get a hold of you to ask you a question. And so I had to turn it over to a property manager. But you know what I noticed? The guy who owned the property management company, he never left his office. He didn't go to any of those properties. And yet he was managing over 600 properties. But he didn't go to any of them. And so you have to think about it that way. Almost everything about managing a property can be done by somebody else. And so you shouldn't try to do everything yourself because that doesn't work in your office, in your medical field. It doesn't work in anybody else's field. You've got to delegate some of the work to other people or you just can't get the job done.
Yeah. You mentioned 15 hours a week when you're...
No, that's a month.
Yes, that's a month. 15 hours a month. And then you're reducing it down to even an hour a month is kind of where it sounds like you're at now. What are the benefits of real estate investing for busy professionals? And what are some common pitfalls they should avoid?
Benefits. The biggest benefit is a quote, and I can't remember who to credit for this quote, but you know, if you can't learn to earn money while you sleep, you will be destined to work forever. Mm-hmm. Okay. Doctors earn money by working. They have to personally go trade their time for money. And so in order to become financially independent in the future, when someday we want to retire, right? We want to not have to work for money anymore. You have to set up something that produces money, when you're asleep, or when you're off the coast of Brazil. You can't be trading your time for money forever. There'll come a time where you're too old, you're not able to trade your time for money. Once you have passive income, you can pretty much do what you want. You can, if you want to just take off, let me give you a great example. In the middle of my practicing years, I came to work one day to find out that my wife's breast biopsy was positive. And that was about to start a long cascade of events, of surgery, doctor's appointments. And I was in a position where I had money coming in from other sources besides medicine, and I had saved a lot of money. And I was able to just call my office manager and say, book me out for the next month because I'm going to take my wife. I'm going to be driving to the doctor's appointments and helping her get through this. And there are so many physicians today that if they were put in that position, they could not take the month off. They've set themselves up in a position where their expenses are so high that they can't miss a paycheck. And I was in private practice, so if I didn't work, I didn't get paid. It was, I got what I killed. And so
it's such a bad term for a physician.
Especially a surgeon, you eat what you kill. It's good for a hunter, but a surgeon, but if you don't, set yourself up in a position where you have some income coming in besides what you do, you can never pivot when some major life event happens and you need to make a change. Because things happen, you never know. I have a friend who was working along and one day woke up with a stroke and his practice was over. Just boom, it's done. What would happen then? If he has not been planning ahead, not been setting up passive income, then his income goes to zero, and that's that. We don't ever want to be in that position. And so I would work hard to find ways to create an income that's not dependent on you being there.
Yeah. And I agree 100%. And I just wondered if you could share any of the actual pitfalls on that process, right? So if we know we have to stop trading time for money and finding this path that that leads us in that direction, in your experience, what are some of the challenges that you've come across that you'd love to share to keep everybody else from having those downfalls?
One of the biggest things that I like to teach people, and it's a final chapter in my book on debt, is finding the finish line. And most of us jump into okay, so they hear me say, oh yeah, I got to have passive income. So then they start these side gigs and they start doing things, that eat up time and they don't establish the finish point, the end point before they start. Okay. And what I see them do is they just get worse off than they were because now they've got their full-time job and they piled on some side gig that's taken up full time. I remember looking at one person who talks to physicians about having, a better life later. They retired from medicine because of their side gig, but their side gig takes up so much of their time that they still need a nanny. They talk about, I'll be more with my kids more. I'll get to be home more because as a doctor, I work too much. And yet they developed some passive income. But it turned out to be active income because they thought it was passive income, but it still takes their time. They just basically changed jobs. And if you don't pay attention to what you're doing, you could end up just changing jobs is what you're doing. And now you're just as busy as you were before, and you didn't actually achieve what your endpoint was. So before you go venturing off into something, figure out where you're going to go with it. I want to develop enough real estate income. Here was my target for retirement. I would have enough real estate income coming in to cover all my expenses. Plus I'd have at least $1 million in my retirement account as a backup. That was my real estate goal. So when we started going, I was buying another one, and then I'd buy another one and buy another one. And I was looking at the next one, and I loved just chasing the deal down. The deals were cool for me. And so at one day I had this next one. I showed my wife, I found this great apartment. Look at this one. And she says, so why are you looking at another apartment? And I hadn't even stopped to think about that. Why am I still looking? And she says, our goal was to have enough real estate so that it covers our expenses in retirement. We have that already. So why are you still out looking for another one? And I think that is a pitfall that we fall into. We get caught up in that process. And I was just out for another one and another one and another one. And I go to conferences and I hear people talk and they say, oh yeah, I've got 2,000 rental units. I'm thinking like, why? If it takes 2,000 of them for you to make a living, what are you doing wrong? Today I only have 55 units. And I only have that because my wife at that point said, stop buying more real estate. You don't need to spend your time doing that anymore. You've developed enough of it to cover you for the rest of your life, cover me and our kids for the rest of our life. Don't keep running when you've crossed the finish line. And you imagine going to a race and taking off and not knowing how far the race was, not knowing where the finish line is. Right. Nobody at a marathon crosses the finish line and keeps running. They stop and go get something to drink and put their feet up and enjoy life more again. And they don't keep chasing the ball. So I think the biggest pitfall I've seen is people get caught up in their side gig or their need for more income. And I got to have more when they've already passed what they needed. And life could be great if they would just step back and enjoy it. And we don't do that. We get caught up.
And some of those guys that say I've got 2,000 units, they may be syndicated in 2,000 units and not personally own any of them. In the way that your path, being that deal getter, like that piece being that interests you, what was the best way that you found to acquire opportunities like that?
So what I did, I'm all about automating everything. And that's how you run your office, right? When I saw somebody and they needed a colonoscopy, I just wrote colonoscopy on the back of their intake form and handed it to somebody. And that set in motion a whole bunch of stuff to happen. So if you just automate everything, it will run smoother and run without you. So what I did in part of this automating thing was that I made a list of what I wanted in a property. And I found a realtor who was also a real estate investor. And I gave him that list. And I said, you find this for me. And then I didn't have to do it. I didn't have to run around hunting for the deals. Okay. He was running around hunting for the deals. He's going to get paid when this happens. So why not make him do some work for it? Okay. So he's got the list of things I want. And then I can go back to being a doctor. And about 2 or 3 times a year, he would call me and say, hey, I got one. So I wanted to invest in small apartments. There aren't that many of them on the market. If you want to invest in single family homes, there's too many of them to choose from. It's like shooting ducks. So many ducks fly up. Which one do you aim at? But with small apartments, there would only 2 or 3 a year would pop up. And so I only needed to look at 2 to 3 units a year. And I usually bought one of them. Okay. I feel sorry for these people that say, oh, you need to make, 100 offers to see if you can get one to stick. I'm thinking, what a waste of time. I don't have the time to make 100 offers to try and get one. I sent him out after what I'm after. If he's only going to present 1, 2, or 3 of them a year, I only need to, and say I make just 2 offers a year and I get one. That means I buy 1 unit for every 2 offers I make. That's better use of your time, And so I found it so much easier to sic the realtor on the thing. And if the first time he comes back, he's going to come back with I got this great thing. And I would say, no, it doesn't meet all these criteria. Don't bring him to me unless it meets it. I had to get him trained the first couple of times because he just was excited to sell me something. Oh yeah. But once you get him trained, then it slows way down because there aren't that many that match your criteria. And when he finds them, we would buy them. So much easier that way than trying to make 100 offers and hopefully 100 lowball offers, hoping one of them would stick. You need to make 2 good offers a year and you're going to buy a place,
Yeah, I like that. And you mentioned unit I'm hearing you talk about property that has several units inside that property. When you talk about apartment properties, apartment complexes, what was it that you handed that agent? It doesn't have to be spot on, but to me, it's like a buy box or a buy window. What was the criteria that you were handing that agent? Number of units.
Okay. I've been trying to remember these off the top of my mind, but I actually put that in the book. Here's the things I gave him the list of. One of them was it has to be a multi-family unit. Another one is it needs to be a possibility of owner financing. Okay. I love owner financing. Owner financing is so much better than bank financing. So much easier, so much more flexible, way cheaper. Get better deals. And so I really liked that. Okay. So that was one of my criteria. It has to be, it's not that the owner is saying owner financing available, but it has a possibility. And that means that the person who owns it must own such that less than 20% of the price is still mortgage.
Equity position. Yeah.
They have to have either no mortgage anymore. In fact, every property I purchased didn't have a mortgage on it when I bought it. Okay. So it's possible to get owner financing. And in several of them, the owner wasn't offering owner financing and I talked them into it because it's better for them if they do owner financing. All but one of my deals, I talked the owner into financing the deal themselves. And so, and one of the other criteria was that it can't be a fixer-upper. I don't have the time to be flipping, fixing. I didn't have time for that. It needs to be, I'm just taking over and it's going to keep going. I don't need to put a bunch into it. And it must work for a no money down deal. Meaning it has to cash flow positive at 100% financing. So that was my criteria to be sure that it had enough cash flow for what we were paying for. So, and there was a few other criteria. I can't remember what location. It had to be within 20 minutes of my house. I only bought property. And it turns out all the property I own, was between me and the hospital. And so on my way to the hospital, if I needed to drop by a property to see something, I could, sometimes, for example, we kept, spare parts on site. And so, like a flapper valve in a toilet. My maintenance man sometimes would call me and say, Mrs. Smith in number 27, she needs the flapper valve replaced on her toilet. It's just running constantly and I can't get to it for a while. Is there any way you can get to it? Well, it's on my way home from the hospital. And I could just say, yeah, okay, I'll stop by and fix that. And so on my way home from the hospital, I go in, run in, grab a flapper valve that's right there on site, run over, replace, knock on the door, go in, replace the flapper valve and go home. It probably was an extra 7 minutes of my time because we had set it up so that it would be super easy. And so when you put all those criteria together, when he would find one of those, it was very unlikely that I would look at the property and disagree with him. If it really matched those things, that's what I'm looking for. And so almost everything matched. And the reason I would pass on it would be something about the property that just didn't set right with me. And so we bid on almost everything he brought to me because of that list.
That's nice. You mentioned automating this process, and I believe that you have a course as well too that helps others learn these processes. Is that correct?
Yes, I do. I have a online course called Automating Your Real Estate Investing. And that was something that helped me initially because I was, one thing I talked about, run it like your office. But the very first year my wife and I purchased our very first one, we did everything. That's something I tell you not to do. We did it on purpose.
It's a good place to learn, though. It's a good place
to
start.
That's exactly why we did that. We decided, okay, we're going to get into real estate. We're going to take just 1 year and we are going to do everything. Every single room turnover, every repair, every paint job, every blade of grass that needs to be cut. For 1 year, we will do everything so that we had a good handle of what it takes to run the property. And the first unit I bought was a 31 unit apartment complex. And so we did everything for that 31 unit apartment complex that first year. And then after that, we farmed out everything and we began setting up all the automating processes. Let me give you a great example of automation. If you're trying to do everything and somebody's refrigerator dies, they call you and they get you out of a room with a patient and you answer the phone and now you're interrupted at work. And then you have to run over and check on it. Yeah, it's really dead. It's not the breaker. It's not the switch. It's really dead. And then you got to run to the store and get a new refrigerator and you got to dispose of the old one and install. I mean, that's a pretty big hassle. When you automate it, what we did is go down to one appliance store and we told them, we want you to handle all of our appliances. That's over 300 units of things that need to be replaced here and there. And we picked out a refrigerator. We picked out a stove. We picked out so he's got a refrigerator. This is the one we want. He keeps those in stock. And so now what would happen is someone would call the maintenance line because the refrigerator died. The maintenance man would run by, check and see, yep, it's really a refrigerator. The maintenance man just calls the appliance company and says, hey, we need a new refrigerator at this address. Here's the person's name. Here's their phone number. And they would just take care of it. They had fix or replace orders. They would come look at it. Can we fix this? If we can, we'll fix it. If we can't fix it, we'll replace it. We already know what we need. They have my credit card on file. So now what happens when it's automated? I'm seeing the patient. Nobody calls me. I get home and there in my mailbox is a receipt for a refrigerator because they charged it to my credit card and then sent me the receipt. And that's the first time that I knew that a refrigerator had died because the whole process just took care of itself. And then I just handed the receipt to my wife and she put it in the tax information. But it can be totally automated and the automation doesn't cost you anything because the appliance guy would install all of our appliances for free because he got all of our work. And when COVID hit, that appliance repair company told us about a year into COVID that our account single-handedly kept their doors open because knowing that they got all of our appliances and appliances kept breaking during COVID, they had enough business. And if somebody has that kind of result because you're working with them, you're on the top of their list. When my refrigerator got first cuts, when the refrigerator needed repair because he had so much work coming from me, that loyalty means a lot. And so you can automate so many things, automate the carpet replacements, automate appliances, automate getting places painted. The guy, your maintenance man knows which paint contractor to call. We need to repaint the whole unit. He just calls the paint contractor and it's done, and it leaves me out of the loop. So automate everything you can. You do that in your office. You don't want to have to start over from scratch explaining everything you want to be done in a colonoscopy and how the bowel prep needs to be done. You have it all automated in the office. There's a list they hand the patient. It's already written out. Here's what you do for your colonoscopy prep. Do that for your real estate as well.
So I'm hearing standard operating procedures, systematizing the processes and basically, you know, like McDonaldizing the processes to remove yourself from that, to create that business where you can be an entrepreneur, not a technician, not a manager, but an entrepreneur. And I think it's a great way to view real estate as a business, right? We're creating businesses. We're not buying ourselves another job. It is the 8th of January here in 2025 recording this, and I hear something outside of your window. Where are you at? Where are you at in the United States?
I am in Oregon.
Oregon. So what is that out there? Is that a snowblower or something?
That's a leaf blower. It looks like the yard guy is here. So my yard care is automated at my home. And the yard guy just went by my window with a leaf blower. Sometimes these podcasts coincide with when he shows up.
It's inevitable. It's inevitable.
I hope it wasn't too loud. But,
no, it's just always trying to figure out, okay, is that a snowblower? Is that a lawnmower? What is that?
We live in a town that when you come into town, there's a sign that says, "It's the climate." Mm-hmm. We have great climate here in Southern Oregon. And I don't own a snowblower. I see snow at my house maybe once every 2-3 years. Mm-hmm. And it's only there for a day or two. So it's pretty nice weather here.
I've got to make my way out to the west coast there and the northwest coast. I know it's beautiful out there, and this time has been beautiful. I am sincerely grateful for the time that you've shared with us, the information you've shared with us, and I'm hoping the listeners have grabbed on some of this. It's not something you plan on doing. It's something that you've done, and you've shared this knowledge with us. Where can the listeners go to find out more about your book, the education platform, even some personal coaching? Where can they find you?
My website is right here, Financial Success MD. So you can find me at financialsuccessmd.com. If you want to ask me a question, my email is md@financialsuccessmd.com. I'm all over the internet. If you Google my name, Dr. Cory S. Fawcett, the first 5 pages is going to show up different stuff for you to look at for me. Sign up for my blog. I put an article out once a week to teach you something about living a better life or personal finance stuff, because I really want everybody to have a great life. That's the whole reason that we do this. The whole reason I got into real estate investing is so that when I'm retired, I can have a great life. I don't want to have to work till I die. So yeah, that's where to contact me. Take a look right there, and I'm pretty easy to find.
Well, that's awesome. And taking these little tiny bits and pieces and helping others and the listeners, helping you find that piece in your life that you can be passionate about, living life by design and understanding those consistent things that we hear, the way that we condition ourselves, the way that others are conditioning us. Like, I don't have the time, or you can get out of debt because you have this and I don't have that. The way that you've just assembled this information is wonderful, and you do it through experience. So jump on that website, find him, look him up, and start taking action. That's the biggest piece. Start taking action. And what a better way to do it than to do it with somebody who's already done it. Thank you for your time today, Dr. Fawcett. And the faucet's been turned on. We're going to turn it off here for a little bit. Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
This is the Real Estate Mogul MD.